Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with an update on the World Championship in 2020. Who will be the next challenger for World Champion Magnus Carlsen? The qualification cycle has started. In early 2020 the Candidates Tournament will be held with 8 players. The winner of that Candidates Tournament will have the right to challenge Magnus Carlsen for the title. Of those 8 players we know one name already, that is the loser, the runner-up of the last World Championship match, Fabiano Caruana. Then the top 2 finishers of the FIDE Grand Prix will also qualify, as well as the 2 finalists of the Chess World Cup 2019. The top finisher of the FIDE Grand Swiss Tournament will also qualify, that will be held on the Isle of Man. 1 player will qualify by rating and 1 wildcard will be selected by the organizer, and that makes up the 8 players. 2 events of the FIDE Grand Prix have already been played as I'm recording this video in September 2019. In May, the first event was in Moscow in Russia and the second one was in July in Riga in Latvia. You can find other videos I made on the 2020 World Championship in the playlist, which I will link at the end of this video. 2 more events will be played in the FIDE Grand Prix, Hamburg, Germany in November and Tel Aviv in Israel in December. After 2 events, these are the standings. Shahryar Mamedyarov and Alexander Grishuk occupy the 2 top spots, which will give entry to the Candidates Tournament. But there's a long way to go. All players will play in 3 of the 4 events, and that makes this list somewhat distorted. As you can see, Mamedyarov and Grishuk played in both Moscow and Riga and will only play 1 of the remaining 2 events, and some other players down the list have only played 1 event so far. So a long way to go to determine who will qualify from the Grand Prix series. As mentioned, the 2 finalists of the Chess World Cup will also qualify, and that event has just started as I record this video. It is a grueling event, 128 player knockouts. Every round lasts 3 days. The players play 2 classical games, 1 with white, 1 with black, and if the score is 1-1, then on the 3rd day a tiebreak is played with rapid and blitz games, and if needed, even an Armageddon game at the end of it. This picture shows the start of the first round. All 128 players cramped in the venue in Khanty-Mansiysk in Siberia in Russia. As the tournament progresses, the playing hall will become emptier and emptier. Every 3 days, half of the participants will go home. I will show you a game from the 2nd day of the first round, where Grandmaster Peter Svidler, 8-time Russian champion, played Daniel Albornoz Cabrera Carlos, a Grandmaster from Cuba. There were a few mismatches in the first round, but not too many. Most of the players in the World Cup are extremely strong. The first game had ended in a draw, and we're going to look at the second game where Svidler is white. He opened with the e-pawn. Albornoz Cabrera played the Sicilian. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, d6. Svidler castled. Both players are following main theory, so let's put the moves on the board. Rook e1, knight was developed. c3 to prepare the push of d2, d4. Black kicked the bishop. Bishop went back all the way to f1. Bishop g4, and here there are 3 main moves. d3 is possible, h3 is possible to kick the bishop, but d4 was played by Svidler. Black decided to take. G takes. Taking with the queen would cost the pawn on d4, that's easy to see. C takes d4, c takes d4, and now e5 is one of the main moves, but so is d5, and that was the move played by Albornoz Cabrera, who knew his theory. After all, he's a grandmaster. Here Svidler played e5. He decided to go, as he said in his interview after the game, for the e5, e6 push, as this is very thematic in this type of position, but as Svidler said, maybe not in this specific one. After the game, Svidler was shown that the theoretical line is knight c3, e6, bishop g5, bishop e7, then white takes on f6 and takes on d5. After knight takes d4, rook e4, attacking that knight with 2 pieces. Then knight f5, and Svidler thought his opponent would know this line and how to make a draw from this position. But as he said, I didn't know anything at all. He did not know this theoretical line. But he knew that e5 was the thematic move, as mentioned. Kicking the knight, knight went to h5 and e6. Here black played the right move, g6. The correct move according to Svidler, giving the knight a path back into the game through g7. Knight c3. After 13 moves, we have a very critical moment now in the game. Here black made a big mistake. He played f7, f5. Svidler said, this is completely uncalled for. You don't need to ruin your position to such an extent. And we'll see in a while why this is such a bad move. Let's look at the alternative. Bishop g7 is possible. The correct move according to Svidler, putting pressure on d4 with both the knight and the bishop. Svidler called this a forced draw. He gave this line, e takes f7 check, king takes back, then bishop h3. The knight can take on d4, then bishop e3, putting pressure on that knight, knight f5, and knight takes d5. Then black would play e6 according to Svidler. Svidler said, I won't be able to avoid the trade of queens, and then it is more or less equal. So all that after knight c3 and then bishop g7. Another option is to play knight g7 instead. And Svidler said if black wants to play for an advantage, he has to go this way. And he gave a lot of variations. I will show you some of it. Bishop h3 again. Then knight takes e6. And here white has to recapture with the rook, not with the bishop. The line continues, f takes e6 and bishop takes e6, keeping black's king in the center. Then bishop g7, bishop e3 and queen d6, kicking the bishop. Then there is knight takes d5, as Svidler explained. Here king f8 is the best move according to the engine, but king d8 was shown by Svidler. Then queen b3, threatening to come into b7. Here b5 is the best move, but Svidler showed what happens if black takes the bishop. Then queen b6 check, and white wins. If you go to d7 with the king, then let's show a line. Queen takes b7 check. King has to go up the board. Bishop f4 check. The black king is not going to survive this. King takes d5. Queen back check. The king has to keep taking pawns, keep going further up the board. And there's a mate in a few moves. Rook c1 check and checkmate. Very nice. We all like to see a checkmate. If after queen b6 check the king goes to e8, then there is a fork. On king and queen, white wins. And finally, if after queen b6 check the king goes to c8, then we have another checkmate on c7. So all this after the move from the game knight c3 and then knight g7. But as mentioned, f5 was played, which was a bad mistake according to Svidler. He played queen b3, leaving that pawn hanging on d4. Black took it, but now the white queen infiltrates in black's position. Here bishop g7 could have been played, rook d1 and then castling. And this is actually still playable for black. But Svidler said that black decided to check white's calculation skills. And after queen takes b7, he did not play bishop g7, he played rook b8, kicking the queen. Queen takes a6, and now knight takes f3 check. Black has his own trumps, he's going to attack the exposed white king. King stepped aside, and queen c7, with a very obvious threat of checkmate on h2. Svidler had seen this, he played queen a4 check, king d8, and now a very nice move. Bishop f4, stopping the checkmate, hitting the queen, and freeing up the c1 square for a rook to attack black's king that's still in the middle. Bishop f4 is a nice move, but Svidler said he actually regretted that he had not played another move. My one regret is that I very much wanted to play rook e5 here. Just because how beautiful it looks. The threat is rook takes d5 check, which means that black has to take with the knight. Knight takes e5. You cannot take with the queen instead, because then this is checkmate. So you have to take with the knight. And then he gave this variation. Knight takes d5, hitting the queen. queen c6, queen a5 check, king steps aside, and bishop g2. And Svidler said, I think this might be winning for me, but if I miss something, then I've just given away a full rook, so it was too risky. And that's why he did not go for that amazing rook e5 move. The engine says that rook c8 should be played here, and that white is indeed better. So that spectacular rook e5 move was indeed correct. But as mentioned, bishop f4 was played, also a nice move. The bishop was taken, white has given up a piece, but now knight b5, and Svidler said, here I was pretty sure I was not risking anything, after having just given up a piece, but he had seen it all. Queen b6 was played here. Svidler also looked at rook takes b5, and then says, I can take with the queen. The engine says bishop takes b5 is stronger, and gives a forced mate in 13 moves. But let's follow Svidler's line after queen takes b5. Then he showed knight d3, threatening mate on h2, but then white has queen takes d5 check, followed by, when the king moves, queen takes f3. It's important to take that knight and not the other one. The knight on f3 has to be taken to take the checkmate out of the position. So that's one variation. Where were we? We played knight b5, and then Svidler showed rook takes b5 and queen takes b5, and then knight d3. He also showed what happens if black takes on e1, takes the rook. Svidler said, well then, black is abandoning his own threats, and white will win after rook c1. You cannot take that rook, because there is a checkmate on d7, and you have to keep that d7 square protected, so the only option is really queen a7. But then there's a very beautiful mate in 2. If you want to look for this mate in 2 yourself, put the video on pause. It's very nice. It's a queen sacrifice. And mate on c8. Very beautiful checkmate this. So all this after the move from the game knight b5 and then taking that knight. Another option is queen b7, as Svidler showed after knight b5. And then he showed this line, rook a to c1, with the threat of rook c7, which is very strong. Then black can take on e1, and Svidler said, I play knight d4, stopping the d5, d4 discovered check, after which it is white that will get checkmated. The engine, by the way, disagrees with knight d4. The engine says rook c7 here is much stronger. Then Svidler gave rook c8, while the engine thinks that knight f to d3 is the best move here. But after rook c8, there is queen a5 check. We're going to see another few very nice checkmates. Rook c7, and Svidler said then white can just take on c7, swap the rooks, and play knight c6 check. That knight cannot be taken. The black queen is pinned. So king c8, queen a8 check. You have to interpose the queen, and this is checkmate. It was Grandmaster Yevgeny Miroshnichenko who gave an even nicer checkmate after king c8. Instead of queen a8 check, he said bishop a6 check also does the job. With an even more beautiful mate, the queen has to interpose, and then checkmate on d8. Beautiful. So all that after knight b5, the move from the game, and then queen b7. But queen b6 was played by Albornoz Cabrera, and now we already had the last move of the game. Move 21, knight to d4. And Albornoz Cabrera resigned here. Why did he resign? The threat is very obvious. Queen d7 is checkmate. So you have to cover that. For example, queen b7. But then there is a winning attack from white. Knight c6 check. King has to step aside. And rook ac1. Bringing an extra piece into the attack on black's king. For example, rook a8. That rook was hanging on b8. It's now attacking white's queen. But then knight e5 check. The rook gives check to the king. King b8. Knight d7 check then wins. You have to give the queen for the knight. Let's play it until checkmate. Knight takes e1. A dying man can eat anything, and then rook c8 is checkmate. Albornoz Cabrera saw these variations, and after knight d4 he resigned, and Peter Svidler qualified for the second round. It's a long road. He will need to win 5 more matches to reach the final and thus qualify for the 2020 Candidates Tournament. And what about our game, Rick against the Chess to Impress viewers? Let's put the position on the board. You have just kicked my bishop. I went bishop g5 on the 10th move, you played h6 and I went back to e3. And now it is your move again. I hope you will take part in our game. You can do so by putting your move, your 11th move, what would you play in this position, in the comments underneath this video, and you will be part of this game. You also will be part of the raffle. At the end of the game I will raffle a chess book which was made available by my sponsor, The Beste Zet, a web shop for chess books. It is a very exciting and sharp position, so I'm looking forward to seeing your moves in the comments. I will keep you up to date on how the World Cup will progress. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like this video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. And here you have the link to the earlier videos I made about the 2020 World Championship. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.